Sego. Big house here. I find through traveling North America. Now, you're talking about the United States and Canada and Mexico and all of that, but actually going back 1,000 years, there were no borders. It was all just one big country. So let's talk about North America. And one of the themes of this documentary is to, number one, find and identify the separate Indian nations and cultures and languages throughout North America. And there were, to my understanding, over 900 Indian nations on North America 1,000 years ago. Now, one of the most ancient of all was the HoChunk people. The HoChunk people, now, also one of the jobs of this documentary as I travel the U.S. and Canada and wherever, North America, I find dozens and dozens, hundreds of lost Indians, people who know they are part Indian, but have no way of tracing their heritage. So I have come to the point where I am just, at times, and always will try to help them people find their heritage. And in traveling the great United States and Canada and North America, I keep running into the HoChunk people. They are probably one of the most ancient people and controversial as to where they came from as the explorers and whatever. So let's go back maybe 200-300 years. The HoChunk people, they have evidence that a lot of them came from the Pacific side of the country. HoChunk meaning several things, but the people of the big voice, or the people where the sun sets. That would be Pacific. But there's also evidence that they came from the Atlantic, saltwater people. As I run into them, they are Midwestern Great Lakes, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, Michigan. You run into the HoChunk people. And this is not something I can cover in even 3 or 4 days of documenting the HoChunks. The HoChunks were probably one of the fiercest fighters, but they were not originally fighters. They were originally hunters, gatherers, and incredible medicine people. And they were, you would find them south of the Hurons, east of the Blackfoot Indians, and west of the Iroquois, coming in confrontation from all of them because their warring Indians would end up going there looking for game or hunting or crossing territories. So they ended up with a formidable warrior force, but they were not primarily warriors. They were medicine people originally. And the funny story I get, funny I guess is not the word, but anyway, the interesting story I get from out on the Missouri border, when the government came through with the Indian Removal Act, they had very big troubles with the Omahas and the Oglala Lakota Sioux as they're trying to squash them onto reservations in Nebraska and Kansas and Oklahoma. They had the Sioux and the Omahas they started almost a civil war. The government, in all their wisdom, split the HoChunks in half and sent half of them down to a reservation that they invented between the Omahas and the Sioux to divide the two of them. Each nation hated the HoChunks because they were not from that area. They didn't look like Sioux or Omahas. They didn't speak the same language, and they called them Winnebagos, which interpreted at the time and to this day, the keeper of the muddy waters. Each side literally hated the Winnebagos, and made their life miserable too. But the government put them down there, and they even named an RV after Winnebago, which is kind of funny, keeper of the muddy water. So, history has claimed Winnebago, or HoChunk, from coming from the east and the Atlantic, and they have proof of this through documentation, carbon dating, and everything else. So they have artifacts and history coming from the east on the Atlantic side and from the western side, from the Pacific, and evidence coming from the north. But understand, the HoChunk people date all the way back to the second ice age. So you are talking about one of the most enduring people, and at the time, in fact, when one of the settler trappers came and introduced them to smallpox, one reservation was reduced from 25,000 people to under 500 people just through smallpox in 1836. So my point is, I cannot go over all of the HoChunk history and Winnebago, but it is something to be researched because it is just unbelievable the amount of history and the heritage going back thousands, tens of thousands of years to the HoChunk people and the Ice Age and the survival and the division. And a lot of people never even heard of HoChunks. But if you are tracking your heritage, HoChunks are a great place to start. And don't be surprised if you run straight into them, because they are a very enduring people. And they also have a full immersion program where they only speak HoChunk at the funerals and weddings and big ceremonies. So they're trying to restore the language. So please go to the internet and study HoChunk and Winnebago people. This is Big House. Thank you very much for following this, and I just hope to track as many down as I can. Oops, I almost forgot to mention, HoChunks were incredible, legendary basket weavers. And I also wanted to mention that they were not in teepees, they were in wigwams, which are the huts, very similar to Iroquois. And they lived in large huts, and the entire community raised the children, not just the parents. So you had to answer to everybody. And that was one of the things about the HoChunks, that you answered to all of the elders as growing up. Same as the Iroquois. So again, this is Big House. If you are lost and looking for your heritage, please do not hesitate to visit the HoChunk/Winnebago people on the internet. And I hope that we can find you your true home. This is Big House saying Ona.